the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party is getting wired up right now, and I'm hoping Melissa Lantsman can answer some very specific questions.
Oh, awesome.
I think you're there and ready to go, Melissa Lantsman. What's going on with Chris D'Entremont?
We're not talking about the budget.
We'll get to that.
I would hope we could take a few minutes to talk about
we absolutely will.
Generational debt that we've just been piled.
Well, we will, but let's just talk about the sudden resignation. Chris D'Entremont has resigned from your caucus. What is the view from your office there?
Look, Chris has, like Lisa said, Chris has made a choice, and I think the choice is, not to fight inflation, not to fight to lower grocery prices and lower the cost of homes like his constituents elected him to do. And I suspect that if Chris was Deputy Speaker, that he probably wouldn't resign.
Okay, so I get the pushback, but just help me walk me through the process. Was there a warning that Mr. D'Entremont was feeling this way, or did you learn about it in the Politico article today?
This is Chris's decision, so I think you can ask him how that all came to be. I certainly didn't know about it, but I'm telling you that Chris made a choice today not to fight for what his constituents sent him here to fight for.
Is it your understanding that he is sitting as an independent?
I don't know. I don't know what the letter says. Maybe you can tell me, or if there's a letter.
Well, I do not know this either. I was texting with people in Mr. Poilievre's office saying we heard he's getting thrown out and that it's happening now.
He certainly wasn't thrown out. Let's make that clear.
I know, but that was the point. Is that I was told that he has resigned from the Conservative caucus, but not as a member of Parliament. Your understanding he is still.
That is my understanding. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we obviously need Chris D'Entremont to come down, but this is not a good thing to have happen, Ms. Lantsman. That for the Conservatives, the Liberals need 3 votes to get this budget through. Your leader has a leadership review coming up, and here you have one of your few Atlantic MPs leaving. Yeah,
well, look, I don't think those things are necessarily connected. I think Chris has a lot of time to figure out how he's going to vote on the budget. He ran on predicated on the fact that he was going to make life more affordable for Canadians. If that's what he is going to do, then I can't see how he possibly votes for this budget. But I think time will tell on that, and we can talk about all of the speculation about who votes how, but today we can talk about this budget, which I think was a really expensive one and a really long speech as well. So we heard it all. I think you read the budget into the record.
Well, it is the moment for the finance minister today.
It's a lot of moments.
But the deficit, $78.3 billion this year. It's not the $100 billion that some projections had. It is right around that 75 to 80.
Well, I don't think you get a prize for not being $100 billion.
No. But it's in that 75 to 80 billion sort of range, well above the 42 billion that your leader put on the table, and the industrial
above the 60 that he promised. Also, just in the election campaign, he costed his platform at about $60 billion, and he broke that promise too. Well above what every family can afford. This is $90 billion in new spending. It's $300 billion of new debt at the end of that 5-year cycle, which is $20,000 per family of new debt in this country. This is the biggest budget outside of COVID. It is double what the last prime minister, who actually spent more than all prime ministers combined in his tenure.
There's actually about $154 billion in new spending, but it's offset a little bit by about $50 to $60 billion in reductions.
That's right.
So it nets out to a $90 billion increase, but the spending goes even beyond that.
That's right. And if he doesn't if he doesn't make those the cuts that he says he's going to make, then we can be in the $100 billion range.
But sort of the assessment, I know the Conservative view is different than this, but a lot of economists, and we heard from the central bank, from Tiff Macklem, that monetary policy has done all it can to deal with what's happening with Donald Trump. Fiscal policy and industrial policy need to take the lead here to sort of help give the economy the tools it needs to reorient itself, and workers and businesses the supports they need to survive. So that is a big part of what's happening here. Is there any value in that you see as you look through the measures on the tax side?
I think there are lots of ways that you can get that done. You can get the regulations out of way. You can rather than raising the industrial carbon tax, you can lower the industrial carbon tax, or frankly scrap it altogether. You can get rid of the stuff that stops us from building what we need to build in this country. But more importantly, if you're a Canadian looking at this who has been struggling to put food on the table, who's been struggling to put a roof over their head, who has been struggling with the affordability of everyday life, there is nothing in this budget for you. And I think Canadians right across the country, from coast to coast to coast, are going to look at it and say, what about me? what are they doing to help me today? And I think that's what we're hearing from coast to coast, and I think that's what every other opposition party will hear when they speak to Canadians.
Yeah, there is a list of affordability measures in the budget on page 24, but it is things that we have heard prior to budget day, right? The elimination of the carbon tax.
And today, life is worse than when we heard those. So, you know, they haven't answered the call for affordability.
Well, I know your point that it's a different deficit and a different approach than what we saw in the election, but a lot has happened since March and then April 28th with the vote, so you need to adjust to the circumstances. Is there no justification, in your view, to move in the direction they've moved and add to the deficit?
These are Mark Carney's promises. He promised that we would have a fastest growing economy in the G7, and in fact, their words don't match what's actually in the math of their budget, because their budget clearly outlines that investment is fleeing this country every quarter until the end of the year since he's been Prime Minister. He said that he would have the lowest debt to GDP ratio. He just changed the word debt to deficit, and he's revised that anchor. So that's not there anymore. These are Mark Carney's promises. They're not my promises, and they're what Canadians expected. So if you're going to measure him against his expectations, I think he's failed that test with this budget.
Okay, so it's very clear then the Conservatives will be voting against this budget.
We cannot support this budget. We cannot support doubling the deficit, doubling the debt in this country, and not a single measure of affordability for anyone who is desperately asking for it in Canada.
Okay, but the counterfactual on the other 2 points you raised there, getting the deficit down to the $42 billion means either much larger cuts to the civil service, well beyond the 16,000 full-time equivalent jobs they're eliminating here, orders of magnitude beyond that, or not doing the infrastructure investment, the tax incentives that they're doing, because there's a cost to those. So how do you get the deficit down to a level that you would be comfortable with without taking the axe even deeper or not doing the incentive programs?
Well, look, I think there's lots of time to talk about what exactly the details of the budget in terms of consultants, in terms of foreign aid funding, in terms of how much further you can cut those things. But I think what's important here is to tell Canadians who desperately asked for measures of affordability to lower the price of food, to lower the price of homes, to lower the price of gas, that none of this is going to happen because the fundamentals are still here. It's the same ministers making the same policies, making the same promises 10 years later. They promised you investment 10 years ago.
You talk about regulation, though. They are laying out a path to get rid of, or just never implement, the oil and gas emissions cap. But it hinges on, hang on, just so the audience can follow along. It hinges on the agreement of a 2030 to 2050 trajectory on industrial carbon pricing. I know you don't like the emissions cap. I know you don't like industrial carbon pricing. Is there a climate policy that you would support?
So look, they could have said today that they would get rid of the emissions cap. They could have said today that they could get rid of the EV mandates. They could have said today that they would lower instead of increase the industrial carbon tax, which, by the way, is directly responsible for the rise in food and housing and everything we build.
No, that's not, like, there is no, the economic analysis on the impact on food puts it at 0.5 to 0.8%. This is what Trevor Toome and others looked at.
So you're telling me that the industrial carbon tax on fertilizer, on fuel, on farming equipment does not pass down in the price of food
97% of emissions on a farm are exempt from the carbon tax?
I don't know how you can look Canadians in the eye and say that the price of food hasn't skyrocketed and these are the reasons for it.
Well, the price of food has skyrocketed.
Packaging taxes.
There's also currency changes. There's climate change that has led to drought.
You're a better defender of the government's budget than they are.
I have read Trevor Toome's analysis, and I go with the experts on this. Like, I think, anyway, they are looking at this as the backbone now of a new climate policy from 2030 to 2050. You're not going to support that, even if this is something with methane reduction and carbon capture can allow oil and gas production to go
With what this budget
ahead.
has put forward in terms of the generational debt and the deficits that we're seeing, we cannot support this budget, and Conservatives will not support this budget.
Okay, one last question. I'm going to circle back to Chris d'Entremont. I know you haven't spoken to him. He obviously has been speaking to the Liberals in some capacity in the run-up to this, and he suggests that either the Prime Minister's office or people on the PMO's behalf have been speaking to other members of your caucus. Are you worried that there could be more Chris d'Entremonts in the coming days?
Well, look, I have no idea if any of that is true. If you have any names, we can talk about those.
I know.
We can
I'm
talk
just
about
going
those,
with the reporting.
Yeah. So those are rumors. But I would say again on Chris, he's made a choice today, and that choice is not to stand up for the constituents that sent him here.
Melissa Lantsman, Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, we appreciate the time.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming in. Green Party Leader Elizabeth May has already said that as it is right now, she cannot support this budget. Here's the Green Leader.
Now is the time to reach out to those of us in opposition parties who could vote for the budget if in negotiations over the next few days we see changes. That's a possibility. It's a real possibility. The vote will be very tight. When we crunch the numbers, it's too close for comfort. And this is the time for a Prime Minister, and I really ask him personally to meet, to sit down and talk and find the changes that could be made to where we could cast our one vote in favor of the budget. But that moment is not now.
Okay, so joining me now is the leader of one of the parties who could give the Liberals the votes they need to pass this budget. Don Davies is the interim leader of the NDP, and he joins me now. So, Don Davies, we just had the breaking news that Chris D'Entremont has been kicked out of the Conservative caucus. Have you had to kick anybody out of the NDP caucus today, or is your group of MPs still deciding what they're going to do?
Our group of 7 is strong and united.
Have they come to a united decision on whether or not they're going to support this budget or not?
We haven't yet, David. We just got out of lockout about an hour ago. We're going to be meeting tonight as a caucus to go through the budget and understand it. And then tomorrow we're going to meet at the regular caucus time meeting. We'll start having our political discussions about the various options that are open to us and whether we'll support the budget or not.
Okay, so your standard for supporting this or opposing this was a question of how far the government went with austerity. And what they've done with the expenditure review is that over the course of 5 years, about $60 billion cumulative in savings, but a net reduction at the end of it all of about $13 billion a year. On a $500 billion budget, that's only about 2.5%. Now, on the job side, 16,000 full-time equivalent jobs gone from the public service this year, about 40,000 overall by 2028, 2029, coming down from a pre-COVID peak or a mid-COVID peak of about 360,000. Is that too much austerity for you?
Well, that'll have to be thrown into the mix for sure. I mean, so far, our preliminary review is as all budgets, there's good things and bad things. On the plus side, there's $51 billion of infrastructure investment, and I noticed that also is mentioned in concert with unionized jobs or community benefit agreements, which requires those jobs to be to pay prevailing wage rates. So that's a good thing, something the NDP asked for. There's a mention of co-op housing, which is, of course, something the NDP has championed for a long time. And there's the East-West Clean Energy Grid, which is on page 1 of the budget. So there's a lot of investment in there, and we did call for an investment budget at the same time. On the negative side, there's definitely things we don't like, including the laying off 40,000 public sector workers. You know,
well, it's not 40,000 layoffs. I mean, some of it's early retirement, some of it's attrition. So, I mean, there may be layoffs. I just want to be fair to the audience here.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. I mean, there's a loss of 40,000 public sector jobs. So, you know, we think when you have a jobs crisis, you know, removing 40,000 good-paying jobs from the economy is not the right way to go. And behind every one of those jobs is a service. You know, right now, I mean, do you want to wait 6 months for a passport or 3 months to get your CRA to return your call or OAS checks? So we're going to definitely contemplate the effects of that. I also don't like the removal of the empty housing tax. You know, that was a measure that was brought in, particularly against foreign investors who were buying housing units here and leaving them empty. And it was to try to encourage them to put that into the housing supply. Well, by removing that, you're going to be taking housing units out of the supply. I don't understand that. It's counterproductive when you have a housing crisis.
Yeah, there's a couple of changes there on the tax side. The 10% tax on luxury yachts and planes that was brought in a couple of years ago, that is gone, largely because the argument being that it's too expensive and difficult to administer. And so the juice wasn't worth the squeeze in terms of what you had to do to get the money out of it. Yeah. So, but yes, I appreciate how that may look, right? And a little bit of context on these things. But
well, I think it's a bit different. You know, the tax I'm talking about.
No, it's like a foreign buyer could buy a house, leave it vacant as an investment, and take it out of the supply.
I come from Vancouver,
I hear you.
Where the epicenter of unaffordable housing, and there was a lot of that going on. So I think that's it's going to have much more impact than the removal of the luxury tax.
Yes, but
boats.
I just wonder if that is another. We do not have clarity on this, or I do not at this point, whether that's one that became inefficient to administer, right? And I don't
think
know.
it was. I think it's a sop to the development industry in this country that was counting on foreign investors to purchase units, and that's one of the causes
Right.
of a housing crisis. So I think it's wrong. And I just want to mention, I was disappointed to see the lack of a digital services tax. You know, at a time when Canadians are being asked to sacrifice, when we're laying off public sector workers and we have a revenue problem, you know, the Liberals resigning from a tax that would raise $1 billion from the biggest, wealthiest U.S. tech giants in the world on their profits made in Canada is wrong. So we're going to throw all this in the mix and have an answer in the next few days.
Well, you'd need 78 of those taxes to balance the budget. The deficit is quite large, even with the expenditure reduction measures, because they are spending big on, you know, infrastructure, on tax incentives to get investment in equipment and in new buildings. The Prime Minister promised sort of a transformational and generational budget here. There's a lot on defense, $80 billion on defense over the next 5 years. Do you think this meets the bar of a transformation and generational budget when it's taken in conjunction with the major projects initiatives announced earlier this year?
Well, you know, I'm looking forward to talking to our defense critic and our infrastructure critics, and we'll come up with a definitive answer. But I'll tell you, at first blush, I would say no. I don't think this is generational or transformational. You know, I think there's moves that are made that will spur investment, but I think this government could have done so much more.
Right. But, you know, you say the caucus is going to study it, think about it, and then come back with an answer. 40,000 civil service jobs. I look at someone like Heather McPherson, who is running for leader of your party. How can she vote for a budget that does that in the middle of a leadership race? Like, do you expect a unified position from the NDP? Or, as you said earlier in the week, that abstention is a possibility? Do you think it could be sort of a split decision from your caucus?
Well, one of the beauties of Parliament and of any caucus is you do get a diversity of views. We come from very different parts of the country. We represent different population groups, and that's important to get all of those views together. So, you know, I'm looking forward to having a spirited, bold, and wide-ranging conversation in caucus where we get to learn what the different feelings are in the different parts of the country. You know, what's happening in Newfoundland is very different than what's happening in northern Quebec or in Edmonton. And so that's why I think it's really important to hear those different views. And hopefully we will come out united. It's a confidence measure. Parties generally vote in a united way on confidence measures.
But is that the plan, for sure?
That is the
All
plan.
7 of you will vote the same way?
That's the plan. You can't vote at cross purposes, David. I mean, abstentions are allowed. When I was asked about abstentions, people vote the same way on confidence, but occasionally a member has difficulty with a particular whip vote, so they ask for and they receive permission from the whip not to vote on that budget. That's not unusual, and that's the kind of thing that can happen.
Okay, so those who vote will either be yes or no, but it's still possible. Some of the 7 do ask for an abstention and sit this one out.
All options are on the table, including that one.
But is there anything you see, just as a final question, that you absolutely cannot support and this budget must fall and the country needs to go to an election?
I've not made that calculation yet at all, but I will put a plug in for one thing I saw that I did like.
Okay.
The Filipino Cultural and Community Center in Vancouver. The Lapu-Lapu tragedy happened in my riding.
Right.
It scarred the community, and I think it's very important that the country rally and send a message to the Filipino community across this country, and I was very pleased to see that in the federal budget. It's time to get that community center built, and now's the time to do it, and I have to say it's something that I pushed for the last 2 years.
Okay, and I lied. One more. When will we know what the NDP are going to do? Thursday, Friday? Will we know before the end of the week?
It's hard to know. I don't want to speculate, but you know, I'm not sure when the first confidence vote's coming up. It could be later this week, or it could be after the break week. But we're going to take our time, and I also want to consult with Canadians too. I've never liked the parliamentary tradition of coming out and saying right away, shouldn't we be talking to people across this country and getting their views? We want to, and we will.
Okay. Don Davies, interim leader of the NDP. We always appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate you being here. Well, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet says it is hard to see how his caucus could support this budget.
It sounds like you're leaning toward voting no on this budget. Can you explain why?
You have a very good perspective on things. Where did you get that? I hardly see how, after having met with our caucus tonight, we could vote in favor of this budget. Those $78 billion of deficit, whatever tricks they want to invent. there's nothing of what we did ask in the budget.
All right, joining me now is Jean-Denis Garon, who is the finance critic for the Bloc Québécois. Mr. Garon, it's good to see you for our annual conversation about this. Well, semi-annual now.
It's been a long time. We've been expecting a budget for 2 years now.
This is true. It was April 16th of 2024 since we last did this. Where are you on this? I mean, your leader says caucus will meet tonight, but your core demands, they don't seem to be here in the form that you wanted. So is it a foregone conclusion you vote no?
The form that you wanted them, none of them is in the budget. And they were demands that are borne by the government of Quebec. They are among the top priorities of Quebecers. Pensions for seniors, health transfers, infrastructure transfers. The minister says there's 100 and something billions in there, but when you look at the fresh money for municipal infrastructure over 5 years, there's $9 billion. And within that, there's $5 billion for building hospitals, and nowadays you don't even build one hospital with that. So there's $4 billion left over 5 years. I mean, that's next to nothing. So and you can count, and you can go on. It's not as if like 1, 2, 3, or 4 of our demands were met. There's been 0 of them.
Yeah, well, it seems like none of the opposition parties who laid out very clear markers got anything they wanted. The emissions cap is on life support, but the industrial carbon price looks like it's going to last, and the deficit's not $40 billion. So the Conservative demands are not met. Your 6 items, including boosting pensions, is not there, and the New Democrats get a 40,000-person reduction in the civil service.
And if I may, there's a nuance, because some of the demands by the other parties they weren't realistic. You know, we're going through some kind of crisis, tariff crisis, and
yours were expensive, though. They would have put the deficit over $100 billion if
Which ones?
on. Well, the increase of OAS, I mean, a 10% increase in different boosts of the pension.
If you sum them up for the next year, 26, 27, it's pretty much the same for every budget year. They were of 6.6 billion, excluding infrastructure transfers.
Right.
If you include transfers, it's 7 billion for the whole country, and the Quebec share of that is half a point of GDP. So that was very doable to meet them all. They were realistic, and the government could do that while properly managed public funds, and they decided voluntarily to do otherwise.
Right. Well, look, properly managed public funds is doing a lot of the lifting there. We've got deficits of $78 billion and $65 billion.
And I'm happy that you say 78 and that the tricky accountancy of the minister didn't bite.
Right. What do you mean by that? That it is a clear assessment?
Well, because the Champagne started to say that
the operations and capital thing.
And if you use that method, the Trudeau government would have had balance or surplus, balanced budget or surpluses 50% of the time.
Yes. Well, I think it's more of a change in their thinking, that they don't want to get into program expansion. They want to get into economic growth.
No,
but the deficit is still the deficit.
No,
it's still $78 billion.
It's a way to get away with an unrealistic electoral promise.
Okay. Well, we'll see. But look, $78.3 billion declining to $56.6 billion by 2030 if all goes well on the economic front, and there's no guarantee of that.
And they don't know where they're going to cut, actually. They say they're going to find 50 billions of cuts, but they've identified only 10, and it's not guaranteed that they're going to do the 10. So that's probably we're probably going to see deficit higher than 78.
Yeah, it's $50 billion cumulative over the horizon, and it works out to about a $13 billion spending reduction on a budget of $500 billion. So it's about 2.5%, 3%. So it is not a massive, Paul Martin era, come hell or high water approach to things. But again, it is not the budget you wanted to see. It does not have the issues you wanted to address in it. So I know the caucus is going to meet tonight. It's a foregone conclusion, though, it seems, Jean-Denis Garon, that you will vote no on this budget.
Well, do you like suspense or do you not?
Look, suspense is fine, but you know what? There's enough suspense right now in the country and in the world. I mean, clarity is also helpful.
We have to show respect for the caucus regularly, but I've been chatting with the colleagues, and I can tell you that the general humor at the moment is not about us either supporting the budget or crossing the floor.
Yes, well, I mean, that's a whole other game. The Conservatives are having a bit of a day. But voting against it, are you at a point where you're prepared to vote as a bloc, en masse, everyone together, even if it triggers an election?
Yes. However we vote, I can tell you that there's 22 Bloc member of parliaments here, and we're all going to be there to vote in the same way.
Okay, because the New Democrats have mused on the idea of abstentions. That Don Davies sat there about a half an hour or so ago. He said, you know, the 7 MPs who vote will all vote the same way, either for or against, but it is a possibility that some people may want to sit this one out. Would that be an option inside your caucus, do you think?
No, the NDP does what the NDP does, and we've had success in the past doing quite differently.
Okay. What do you make of this development we've seen today with Chris D'Entremont, the former Deputy Speaker of the House, resigning from the Conservative caucus? Initially, we'd heard he'd been kicked out. I think it's you can't fire me, I quit, maybe dynamic, to sit as an independent, and suggesting in an interview with Politico today that he has been talking to the Liberals about crossing and that others in his caucus have been talking to the Liberals about crossing. How do you expect this to play out in Parliament?
Well, look, I can't really speak to the individual case of Chris D'Entremont, but in general, I think that just the idea of crossing the floor is, I think it's a very unethical thing. We're elected as members of Parliament under a party banner with a program, with a leader. And people vote for the whole package. So I think, that's something that should never happen. And at some point, I would be in favor of us reconsidering the electoral rules, so that at some point when someone does that, well, maybe that would be a good thing to go back, see our voters to see what they think.
Okay, well, but what do you think this means potentially for the life of this Parliament, for the future of this budget? Elizabeth May has said she's not going to support this, though she does want to talk to the Prime Minister about changes to the climate plan. I'm not sure if that will happen or not, but the fact that Mr. D'Entremont, it sounds like that adds one to the Liberal column that they needed. Do you think they can get to the 171 that they need?
Well, it does give them one more vote. It doesn't give them a majority. I think the whole challenge of getting a majority is still there. But it doesn't change the fundamentals, which is that the Liberals did not get a clear mandate in the last election. People, Canadians and Quebecers, didn't give the Carney government a majority, and I think that didn't change. And I think that whatever happens with floor crossing or whatnot, I think that government should take that into account a little bit.
Okay. Your caucus is meeting tonight.
Yes.
It's 6:16 p.m. Eastern Time, if my laptop is not lying to me. When is your caucus meeting? And when will we know what you're going to do?
Is it what the exact time? I lost count of time today, but it's quite. It's probably my next stop. Yeah.
Okay, so will we know tonight what the Bloc is going to do, or will I know you like suspense? Will we have to wait until tomorrow?
I don't.
Could
I
it be
actually
next
hate
week?
suspense. I actually hate suspense, but I don't want to be the spoiler tonight. But that's a decision that we take. We make these decisions collectively. Sure. I don't think there's going to be a decision that's hard to make. I think chances that we support the budget are next to 0.
Okay.
But when are we going to release a press release? I don't know.
Okay, but you don't suspect you'll leave us in suspense for very long. We will know rather quickly, officially, though it seems pretty clear where this is going to go.
I think you can all go to bed and wait until tomorrow morning.
Okay, Jean-Denis Garon, the finance critic for the Bloc Québécois. I always appreciate the time, sir. Thanks for doing this.